Hello, hello, and welcome to the stream. My name is Matthew Cassinelli, and I am here today to talk to you about action-centered design, a framework from guest Vidit Bhargava. I should have asked how to pronounce your name. About how to design for Apple Intelligence and AI in the world of actions and everything like that. So, Vidit, welcome to the stream.
Hey Matthew, it's nice to be here. I'm excited about today's conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. It's a pleasure. It's been,
Mm.
I don't remember when did we first meet at WWDC, or was it even layers? It might have been after.
I think it I think it was layers
Yeah,
right after the workflow acquisition, I think,
nice.
if I remember correctly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your apps, and then a little bit about how you came up with this framework?
Mhm. Sure thing. So as you probably know, I am the designer behind Lookup. I design, develop, and produce apps on the App Store. Most popular work is Lookup. Lookup's a dictionary app that enables people to learn new words through illustrations and interactive quizzes. Apart from Lookup, I've also worked on a couple of other apps that include Percy, that's available for Vision Pro, includes Zones, which is a time zone converter for multiple Apple platforms, including macOS, has a really handy menu bar app. And yeah, I've been doing this for over 14 years now. And this is um, this is what I've been doing as a professional. I make apps and I design them and develop them. I put them on the App Store. Um, and that's about it. And
Nice.
most recently, I've been working on the action-centered design framework, and this is sort of an evolution of how apps have evolved over the last few years. And um, it's a new methodology of designing interfaces for what apps are today, as opposed to what apps were back in 2007.
What's the kind of core difference between then and now?
But the big difference between then and now is 2007, the iPhone launched, and it was one phone with one screen size that you had to take care of, and you could make pixel perfect apps on Photoshop
Totally.
and then develop them. And you did not have to think about what would it look like on an iPad. You didn't have to think about what would it look like when it is as a widget on your iPhone. What would it work like with if it's a shortcuts action? You didn't have to think about those things. You just made one app for one screen size. You had like pixel perfect design, and you could literally lay out everything on that small canvas. Well, that is not how apps are today.
Yeah.
Today, uh, it's not just the phone app's interface. It is a phone app that exists on multiple screen sizes, that exists on multiple devices. Increasingly, all the apps are becoming universal. So they're gonna work on the Mac. They're gonna work on the iPad. They're gonna work on watchOS, tvOS, you name it. And then there are the
HomePod,
extensions you have to
perhaps.
HomePod,
Yeah, that'll be.
HomePod
That's the next
perhaps.
one that I think is going to
Yes.
be
Hmm.
super interesting.
Uh-huh. No, I'm excited about that one too. It sounds like they might be onto something with Apple Intelligence and Apple
Totally.
and everything coming together to actually make something useful.
Totally. Let's save that for later. I don't want to derail your part, but so
Uh-huh.
let's get into just the basics of your action centered design framework, because I really like this, and I've seen something similar of like action oriented programming, or but I like the design part because it does matter outside of just how it functions and things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, this is a generalized framework, and you can actually use it to go beyond applications as well.
Cool. Do you want to? Should we switch to the slide
Mhm.
right now, or okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Let me pull that up. Here we go.
Mhm. So our environment, circumstances, and experiences, uh, they inform our wants and needs, and then we perform actions to fulfill those wants and needs, right? So if it's from going from place A to B, one might walk, one might even cycle to reach from point A to B faster. And the cycle then becomes a tool to perform that action in a more efficient manner. And you could consider the pedals of the cycle to be an interface in that sense.
Definitely.
But mhm. And well, then let's take a look at what it has meant for computers to do the same. Uh, when we have our wants and needs, we perform actions and we use different kinds of tools to perform those actions. What does it mean for computers? And for computers, when we look at it, it started with the Apple II, at least the GUI part of it or the UI part of it. Um, you have the Macintosh, which introduced the GUI, the iPhone that introduced apps and the concept of touchscreen. And when you look at the interface to perform actions on this particular tool, this is what it looked like in 2007. It's very simple. You have one screen. You have you can design whatever you feel like on this one screen, and that was it, right? But today, apps don't look like this. They look a little different, and not just in appearance. It's also about these things. Today, the iPhone app that you look at is not just an iPhone app. It is the code that's running on the iPad. It is what is going to show up on Vision Pro. It's going to show up on Apple Watch. It's it is what it includes live activities, share extensions, control center widgets, and all sorts of things. Like this is not just one screen size and one you know one device and one screen size. It is multiple modes of interaction. Um,
Seeing this is wild when you think about just coming from a single
mhm.
screen to all these different versions and the complexity that has come from that. It really does make a difference.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, when you think about it, when it started with the iPhone was like one screen size for a very long time. I remember even in 2012, they had like this one iPhone and one size, even if they increased the size by a bit, but it was still like, it wasn't this big of a shift. Um, but over the last 10 years at least, it's been like constant evolvement and constant upgradation of all of these extensions and all of these systems that have come together to be known as like, Apple platforms. And yeah, like this is what the interacting with apps looks like today. It's not just a phone app. You could have like a word of the day widget. You could have a live activity. You could have a shortcuts action that is uh, customized to your action button. Or you could even have like control center widgets that act as actions. Very soon you'll be able to um, run different app intents through Apple Intelligence. So hopefully that is going to be like the next big frontier as well.
Totally, totally. I want to say one thing. Have you ever
Mhm.
noticed? I just found this out a couple months ago that the shortcuts widget inside, if you go down to the bottom, you can now like select different action or individual shortcuts, but you can also select app intents the same way that you can do the action button. And so you
Oh,
can actually put actions directly onto the home screen as intents in the shortcuts widget,
oh wow.
which is like
Wow,
I mean,
I didn't
I
know
don't know if
that.
anyone's ever going to find that
Uh-huh.
really, but the capability is really cool. I've really
Uh-huh.
wanted ways to like be able to deploy preset widgets better too. That would be super interesting.
Hmm.
Here, let's continue.
No, yeah, 100%. I think that actually changes a lot of things. When you look at control center widgets right now, there's the limitation of interactivity, which the shortcuts widgets don't have. So
Yeah,
when I look at it that way, then it actually makes sense to, just have everything as a shortcuts control center widget.
totally.
Then you get all the interactive elements out of it.
Just to, I think you all now brought it back to
Hmm.
that's what I think the HomePod is going to be, is just controls, just running intense with that
Hmm.
interactive level, and then maybe displaying snippets and things like that.
Hmm.
But it's super interesting.
Hmm.
All right, here you can continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Like with that system, you could expand that into like different things totally. I wish I had like mocked up some HomePod UI over here as well.
Yeah,
But I'm totally with you with HomePod like just running app intents and the app intents being like part of the OS,
yeah,
the HomePod. And that's sort of like what modern day interaction looks anyway. Right. This is like a set of screenshots from a recent app that I've worked on. It's called Word of the Day by Lookups. It's like Lookups Word of the Day, but in a very compact form. It's like no additional features, no additional anything. It's just the word of the day. So if you just enjoy watching that, you can do that. But the cool thing about this is that it is purely based on app intents. And these are like six different platforms that it's available on. And I've only written the UI for each of these platforms. Everything else is practically an app intent that's running in the background. So if you need to fetch like word of the day, that's an app intent in itself. And fetching these words um, on on like different devices, just need to change the interface for all of these different platforms. But at the end of the day, like powering underneath it is like app intents because I think like that's just faster to build. Yeah, I don't think I could have built
yeah.
an Apple TV app if I was not sharing a lot of code.
That makes sense. I feel like that's a big thing, is like build
Hmm.
once, deploy everywhere with intents. And in particular,
Hmm.
they started doing a bit
Yeah.
of like, I think I've been saying this, is that I think one of their big recommendations at WWDC is going to be that specifically, is like stop reusing the same code, just call your intents everywhere and really start from the ground up with
Hmm.
this. So like you're ahead on the game here, I think.
Yeah, this is a project I started last year after all the announcements, and I was like, it would be fun to just build one app that just does this one action. It's not like a lot of things. It's just seeing words of the day. That's it. That's the entire action. That is what the entire like widgets are based on. That is what like different platforms are based on. It's like, just as the UI experiment, this would be a good idea. And that's literally what it is, right? Um, I feel like this is how I would be designing apps going into the future for sure.
Hmm. Cool. Do you have any other slides, or is that?
Hmm.
Oh, nice. Okay, I was gonna say. I thought you meant that's is it for the thing. Keep
Hmm.
going.
Now, we could move to demos soon, but I just wanted to highlight
Sure.
you know the way we design apps right now is still very much this, right? Every design tool looks like this. It starts with an iPhone app. It This is what it looks like. You design for the iPhone screen, and then you build out all of those different extensions. And this is very device specific, and given a time where the iPhone app is no longer the center of interaction, and very soon it might not be the most important part of your interaction. Um, it seems like an old strategy to sort of work starting with the iPhone app and then going into like different extensions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm. I mean, this. I would say this is more of a design tool for uh, like the 2010s, and when the iPhone app was still very much the center of everything, and then you had to make an iPad app, and then maybe a different extension. Like, and what I want to do is like I want to challenge that, and I want to like say like, you can actually design starting with the action itself. So sort of going into the app intents before you're actually even designing the app, and taking a look at like how would you design something like that.
I will say I love
Mhm.
I love that idea just because it's where I want you to end up anyways with your intents is actually
Mhm.
building them and implementing them. And so I think what's hard is a
Exactly.
lot of people don't know what that looks like, but I'd say the
Hmm.
easiest way is go look at the shortcuts app. Like that's the thing that's I
Hmm.
think underrated is that there are already examples in there and that you can kind of build out from there. Like I just worked with a client, Food Noms, where we did like 45 different actions and different actions
Hmm.
for each function. And we did it by breaking their data model down into like what are the main things you do and what's the data that you work with.
Exactly. Like when I look at it, like, an app is literally a set of information and actions. That is literally what an app is. So when you look at it in that lens, like it becomes imperative to just, start with the actions that you're working on, start with the actions that you want your app to like accomplish, and then make app intents out of it. It's it's an easier and like faster way of doing things, and you save a lot of time because at the end of the day, like you might skip, let's say, a tvOS app, or you might skip having, you know, having like a shortcuts action because it's not like, most of your users are not using it. But when you look at it, like when you look at how the platform is evolving, even the most popular features, whether it is widgets for, everyday interactions, or, if it's like a ride sharing app, or if it's a food delivery app, live activities are so important. And all of those things are powered by app intents. And increasingly, everything else that's on the OS is also being powered by app intents. So it just makes more sense to, just start with that rather than, you know, coming from an iPhone UI.
That's
I
true.
understand with legacy apps, of course, you need to break down in the reverse order. But with the new app that you're working on, it just makes sense to just start with actions itself.
I think it's interesting too because it almost feels like at first it seems like more work, but like you said, once you build the
Mhm.
actions, then you almost get like other platforms for free, quote unquote. Not really, but much more easily
Mhm.
than you would have otherwise. So I totally think that's
Yeah.
like the major benefit of this as well.
Mhm. And like I could show you some examples
Sure.
of like how I would break down different actions. Um, like, the most basic one is like maybe listening to music. That's like one action. You play a song. That's like an action, right? And then you have like this sort of information that you need, and then the UI can just be like anywhere with this particular information, with the song name, the artwork, and the artist, and you have like the song itself. That is an entity in itself. Um, you can present that information like so many ways. You can present it as a music widget, or you have the iPhone app itself, or like this is a custom live activity that shows the now playing stuff.
Man, I'm just seeing HomePod UI though. Like that's
Mhm.
why it seems so clear.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, but it is
Uh,
like
no,
that those
I
extend
agree
out wide
100%.
across the whole
Yeah.
screen then and things like that or even
Yeah.
CarPlay could get better
Mhm.
widgets. I guess that's a little more like
Right.
let's not crash our cars while looking at the word of the day. But
Mhm. Yes. Like I don't think I'm gonna include like CarPlay support for
yeah,
lookup anytime
maybe not.
soon.
You
Maybe
could
not.
speak it.
Yeah. Maybe if it was Maybe if it was like a story or something that you could go through and like, okay, these are the words that you learned today. But that's like too far off.
Yeah. I guess you could
Yeah.
have the AI like read it out though. It's not in as far off as it used to be.
Yeah. It's but yeah, like you can see how like it can expand to different platforms. And yeah, like same with like defining a word. Like you begin with this action, like you want to define a word, and you set out with the information that you need to define that, and then you present a UI, which could look like a shortcuts action. This is what happens when you run a shortcuts action to define a word in lookup, or you could put it on Apple Watch, or you could put it on Vision Pro, and that's literally how everything is working right now. So you start by defining the action. Um, you specify the information needed to perform that action, and you design and adapt the interface for that. So that's literally what the framework is.
Yeah. Um,
And
sorry, keep going.
mhm. And the good thing is like app intents are literally structured around the same thing. You have the app intent, which is the action. You have app entities, which is providing the information for that action. And then each app intent can result in an can result in a visual overlay, which provides the interface for that action. And the way you can design them is that you can design an interface that executes an app intent inside of an iOS app, or you could design an app intent that presents an overlay with the interface that would show up in shortcuts or anything like that.
Sorry, I'm having some technical
Um,
difficulties on my windows are in a weird place, but keep going and
mhm,
I'll be able to get it.
mhm. Um, I'll just skip over some of the slides and start with the demos, if that's okay.
Sure.
Mhm. Stop sharing. Yeah, it's a lot of like it's a lot of repetition in some ways. I'm like, okay, maybe we can get through some of the slides. So yeah, this is what an app intent actually looks like. So you have the perform logic, which is where your action logic goes into. So every app intent has a perform function. You have the inputs, which are app entities, and you have the outputs that are that are the view or the information that view contains. So you can provide a data structure as an output itself. And yeah, and this is practically the action-centered design framework. And you can design apps today with this framework, and you can design them to be multimodal and multi-platform applications.
I think one of the really interesting things about the perform part is that like
Mhm,
that part is where your app does its unique thing and the rest of it is really just
mhm,
the boilerplate code from app intents of it, you still have to decide how to deploy those, but I found it interesting that it's just kind of that part is sort of like up to you as a developer and your magic, but the rest is a fully standardized way to design actions that are super flexible as well. It's almost like too flexible to understand at first without exploring some of the
mhm,
shortcuts actions, but I think that's a super important part, at least for me as a even just like an app intense consultant, is like I'm thinking about the actions. You don't have to have it work at all. Like it can you can design the whole thing and then make it actually do the function later. And I think that's part of the
mhm.
design process is like you're fully thinking through how this all works beyond just Like usually you're actually doing the
Mhm.
fully opposite and thinking about just what it looks like and don't even end up realizing how it
Exactly.
works until the end.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's one of the biggest challenges with something like that, right? Like you start with, okay, this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's gonna, this is how it's going to happen. But then the data is completely different, and the real world data is completely different. And the way something works is, eh, you take the example of, a lot of the AI based applications, and they're like, we'll just ask the computer this question and it will give us a result. And this is, just ask a UI and it would give you a UI. But the reality is, like, in between that, there are so many steps that those steps just get shoved under this, generic loading UI. And you have to think, like,
Totally.
what if you started with the actual performing part and you're like, okay, these are the steps that are necessary. And for all of these steps, we'll have an interface for that.
I think.
You'd have so much like, Mhm.
Oh, keep going. Sorry, I can follow up.
uh, yeah, like even with something like that, just focusing on the actions that, an AI-based tool is performing, you'd have a so much better interface and so much better understanding of what something like that is doing, as opposed to just showing like a loading screen saying like, oh, it's just going after the internet,
Yeah,
and that's how it's gonna show stuff. Yeah.
I think that's definitely one of the reasons I'm like so intrigued by App Intense and what Apple's doing, even though they're like at this exact moment, it's a punching bag of a joke for where they're at. But I think what they have,
Yeah.
most people don't understand that at this level, that it really is like a modular interface for any type of action. And that as soon as you define the action once, it can generate a UI anywhere, regardless of it might not be like just on demand with a prompt, but even that could happen. And then I think the important part too is that your app is already designed to work with that system, because then you can just hook into a new UI that someone else presents. So like, oh man, now I'm
Mhm.
even thinking of the redesign, and like you could have like multiple UIs for the same thing. Like you could have your own
Right.
custom, you could have skins and stuff like that in a way that the user can actually control, and your app still looks good and fits in, and it's all
Hmm.
app intent. So the design, I hadn't even thought of the
Hmm.
design aspects.
I
Yeah,
I seriously hope that the redesign actually addresses this thing. It's like there's been so much talk about, the visual of it, and
totally.
it's gonna look like this glass effect, or
It's
it would have
UX,
like
not
circular
UI.
icons. Yeah, and that's like that's good. Like there's a visual layer to it, and I enjoy like a visual refresh. But at the end of the day, like, if you have to change something, you have to change it from, like, okay, this is the system. This is how you have navigation going on, and this is how you can enhance that right now,
Hmm.
right? And like if they were to implement like app intents and like go deeper into that, they're like, just focus on app intents and it renders the UI um, for you in this particular direction. I think that would be so much more refreshing. You'd be like, okay, so now you're like literally thinking about it in this way. You have UI that scales from, you know, a control center action, which is like the smallest bit of UI that you could have right now for your action,
Hmm.
is something that goes all the way up to the Apple TV or maybe even the HomePod, and just having yourself, like, free yourself from the app interface itself
Totally.
would be so much more refreshing.
I think the
Um,
Siri aspect of that is also
mhm.
understated, and the way that you can add like HomePod support so that you can just
Yeah.
use full voice and never actually see the interface. Like that's actually
Mhm.
there and robust and built out. I think
Yeah,
this is where like
and
we
the thing
know
is,
this,
like,
but not everybody
app.
does. So
Mhm. Yeah, and the thing is with app intents, like, because they started with shortcuts and Siri, they already have all of that built in. I remember, like, when intents used to be like a file inside Xcode that you have to program. Like we were already programming like what would the Siri response would that look like? The short description
Hmm.
of the response that Siri would give was part of the intent itself. So the funny thing is like they have the groundwork. They've like spent what like 6 7 years now um working on making shortcuts and actions to the point where they are like if you start by saying like okay, Apple Intelligence is powered by that, you could very soon say like Siri is powered by that.
Hmm.
And then when you think about it, like literally everything can follow suit. And it's like okay, everything is powered by App Intent, so you now have like this singular source of truth for everything that's going on in the OS, which to me is like very um is like a new way of doing things
Yeah.
and something that would save Apple so much more time. And like um, I'm looking at Siri right now, I'm looking at shortcuts right now, and I'm like, everything works, but they work in like different silos.
Yeah.
So what if like everything combined together to, have a good layer for that?
Totally. I mean, I think that's
Mhm.
where they got to be heading. I'm not sure if they're. I was curious, like, what's stopping them right now? Because I think I heard a lot at after I gave my deep dish talk that people were like, "Why would I do this? Because I give up all of the interface of my app and control over
Mhm.
my app." And like, my argument was always, if I'm doing this, I'm like deeply engaging with your app. I'm not just like, I think people think it gets fully abstracted out to like the chat GPT level where it just scraped the
Uh-huh.
data and tells you the answer and doesn't ever really show you the source, or it's under a drop down versus the
Mhm.
actual app handling it, and that the app is the core part of the experience, not like I mean it's a little bit of
Uh-huh.
sort of that what you said of like 2008 thinking of, I always say it's like
Yeah.
my people are going to come to my app and use it all day long, and it's like no, that's never been true. And there is now it's part of that ecosystem of actual functions and widgets and all those things.
Mhm. Yeah, I think when this changes, it's going to disrupt a lot of apps for sure. It's going to change how people see the app interaction as okay, this is the engagement that we have right now, and this is what this is what the engagement looks like now. This is what it looks like post Apple Intelligence, post that. And I feel like, with the fact that, oh, am I giving away the entire control? It's probably not true. Like you still have the interface, you still have control over how you present the interface
Totally.
and how do you present your information. Um, like even if Apple Intelligence is running like multiple actions together, it is at the end of the day, it's gonna present a UI that picks up from different actions. It's not going to present a UI that it generates on its own.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
we're not seeing like on the fly, like automated UI. It's
Just like with
yeah,
random features or something like that too. Yeah, I'm just imagining the six
yeah.
finger or extra fingers in your UI.
It's like yeah, everything is AI. Even generated generated UI is AI. So you have like six finger people and
I think
you know
the part about like
buttons that go.
generated UI though
Mhm.
versus like that modular UI, I think could be missed where like we said, because it can just reformat into whatever UI it needs. Like that's in theory what
Mhm.
generative AI is or UI is for, but they're
Mhm.
just like throwing it against the wall versus like here's the
Uh-huh.
I mean, like I see so many prompts that have structured data that is like that's what the intent can already provide. So I think that part is
Mhm.
more, it's like generative, but it's generated by multiple Apple designers instead of just
Mhm.
whatever ChatGPT came up with.
Mhm. Also, like this way, it's easier to integrate with more actions, right? You're providing a developer platform over here.
Hmm.
The biggest challenge with something like ChatGPT or any other chatbot that, like any other LLM that comes out with their own chatbot, is like they don't have a developer story along with that.
Hmm.
Like even I'm looking at Perplexity's actions and Perplexity's like different cards that they show. They they have like a good small array of actions that they themselves have created. But if Apple were to do something like that, their biggest strength is the number of developers that are on their platforms.
What do you think of that?
And I think like, mhm,
Perplexity in particular, I was kind of skeptical about it first, but then I was like, wait a second.
mhm,
Just, I mean, I don't know if this will only happen like in the EU, but I was like, there's no way Perplexity could ever essentially recreate workflow from scratch and then build this whole platform and then get developers to adopt it. Like the adoption part, I think, is the biggest part. But
mhm,
then I was like, wait, what if they can just call intents? Like, what if I don't know if
mhm,
Apple why the only reason they would allow this is because it would be good for the users, which I think is a very
uh-huh,
strong reason. But like having all
right,
these tools be able to call your intents and have access to that, but not do it in a secure
mhm,
way too. I think that would be.
uh-huh.
I don't know why
I
they
remember
would
a few
though.
years
Like
ago
unless they had
they
to, unless the
I remember
lawyers
a
told
few
them.
years ago they started like allowing people to bundle shortcuts. Remember that was not a thing
Would you?
back in 2018.
Yeah.
So
Or like,
you can
hmm,
you can bundle a shortcut with your app and have people install that shortcut on your phone, which is like you just share the shortcuts file,
yeah,
right?
totally.
And that shortcut could have like any n number of actions. It could have actions from other apps that are not installed. And I feel like this could literally
Hmm.
just be part of that. You're like, okay, you have you have the availability of actions. You have all of these actions, and you have like some sort of like action central, you know, which is coordinating that, and you can say like, okay, perform this particular action
I think that's what
um
Apple
from
Intelligence
within inside the app.
is. I think that's why
Hmm.
I don't know how it could hook into a third party without it just giving away what Apple's already doing.
Yeah.
Like that would be like the best
Hmm.
for a consumer thing. I think it's the same of like what motivation do they have to enable a third party thing. But I think we are moving more towards that realm of just like ultimately I want to use ChatGPT or whatever, and like maybe you're never gonna figure out Siri properly. So like that's not. I'm just joking, but like many people already like live in that mindset, and so I think getting like having a way that you can use the AI that you want, and then it can actually work with all your apps, I think will be important.
Hmm.
Whether or not I think it's just one of those things of like not this year, not like maybe they'll do it after 5 years or
Hmm.
something, but they'll take the advantages
Hmm.
that they can get now, which is fair.
Yeah.
It's business, but
Like right now, I think for Apple, the their priority might be to just like move everything that's in Siri to something that's a little more robust.
mhm,
And it's like, you have I keep thinking about this. I'm like, even if just a string of app intents that was running behind the scenes in Siri, um, like it might just be a better experience
totally.
as opposed to what it is right now.
I would love
And
that. Like even well, that's
mhm,
the day O3 came out. I was like, this is
mhm,
what it's doing with its reasoning and like operate. It like calls up Python to do things. I was like, that's exactly how I build
mhm,
shortcuts, and it's using the exact same
right,
level of functionality. And so that's I think
mhm,
that's where like I don't know. Oh, it's always so hard to the difference between like what they're shipping now or last year, what they're probably going to ship,
yeah,
and then like I did like see internally a bit of like they can do whatever they want inside the company. Like I think people take that for granted
mhm,
that they're not like, oh, we're not allowed to like they can do it. Whether or not they productize it and give it to users is a different
mhm,
story. But I think that's a huge thing that they're probably already playing around with something like that. And usually it
mhm,
comes down to like, is this good enough to run on the phone without reducing battery life all day and degrading the
yeah,
experience over 2 years? Like that's the key part of like the Apple Intelligence stuff like only worked 3/4 of the time, but like that's because it's running on your phone and not on a actual computer. So like battery and
mhm,
all those considerations are I know that they're like that's the only thing. If we mess that up, we're done for with the iPhone. So like they will take
Uh-huh.
years of hits in order to just keep it. You still know it'll be a reliable product, and I think that that
Hmm.
part's really important with some stuff like this. Is
Yeah.
it's
I
worth
think
it.
with Apple's
Yeah,
approach, it's it's like they have this one approach of doing things, which is like they announce something at the end of the year. Like, they announce something in like June, which I would say like when the end of the cycle, I should say. Um, and then they go silent for like the next 1 year. You only hear about new features and like product releases. But like June is like this software roadmap sort of where you're like, okay, this is what we've been working on.
totally.
And this gives like people the false illusion that so like Gemini is coming out with these things and OpenAI came out with these things. Where is Apple? Why is Apple not
It's
announcing
in three
something?
weeks.
And yeah, it's like 3 weeks. So they announced like the things that they've been doing for the last 1 year and even like the year before that. So
I think it's true that
it's
like this cycle needs to
Mhm,
probably change or something
mhm,
with AI and just the speed of updates because of this,
mhm.
and that it really is like,
Yeah.
what is the world even going to look like a year from now versus like taking those. I think quarterly updates would be a huge improvement
Mhm,
from them. I think, but what's funny is
mhm.
it's like, oh no way, it's late May and people are unhappy with Apple. No, that's every single year this time of year. It's like people are like, oh, Apple's
Yeah.
falling behind, and then whoever
Yeah.
planned Google I/O when they did was genius, and they knew exactly
Yeah.
what they were doing because they got 3 weeks
It
to be
it
ahead of
creates
Apple
the
and be like, Apple's so far behind every time.
Yeah, it creates that perception, right? Like every time you hear that, and you're like with ML, I remember early like 2015, 2016, like ML was the next big thing, and everybody was like, oh, Apple's so far behind in ML. But now you look at today, the vision models are on par with everything. They have like Core ML and Create ML, and all of that is working seamlessly.
Yeah,
So it's not and and it used to be the same cycle, right? You'd go into May, people will be like, "Oh, this is Apple's BlackBerry moment. This is they're done for. They're
yeah,
like too focused on privacy." And then you would have like this thing come out in like 1 year. And I think with Apple Intelligence, it has been 1 year, and the products are like not good enough, and
totally.
they've had like multiple delays, and that's what's causing like an increased anxiety amongst people. It's like, oh, this is they've like completely lost the ball on this. But I would say like 1 year's worth of work is a lot of like they have the prototypes internally. They
Hmm.
have multiple teams working on AI. They have multiple teams working on what they're gonna have. That's just common sense, right? And so I wouldn't particularly think about it. Like if I was reading the news today, I wouldn't think about it as like, oh, Apple's been not doing anything in the last 1 year, and
Totally.
like Apple Intelligence is not their priority or something. Um,
I think that's why. I mean,
and
like,
that's sort of what gets lost.
I'm
Mhm.
totally in the. I'm tuned in just because yeah, I know that this space of like, I've been here, like, guys, they've done stuff. Like, if you just look at the headlines of the features and that I mean, I think what's hard is like the sentiment is 100% right that like where they are is not nearly where you can go with these other tools that are sitting right next to you. But I think the part where it's
Mhm.
not like they've been caught red-handed, or I don't know the right metaphor, caught and like are just
Yeah.
behind and hadn't even thought of this, is App Intense as a framework has been around for multiple years and they've extended it up in ways that I mean, I'd love to know the like we should ask John Gruber to ask the executives at the talk show, because that's the one of like,
Yeah.
did you actually think about this when you acquired workflow? Like that, I would love to know, because like that would be
I
a thing that only like no one would say, because they would be like, this is like 8 years down the line, or it is just like, no, they
yeah.
might have just lucked out. I mean, obviously they bought it, so
I
like
mean,
something
yeah.
somebody saw something and did it, but
Uh-huh.
without it. I'd be super curious to know where they are. What do you think about?
Yeah, I would love to know the answer to that as well. Although I do think like, that far off into the future, I don't suppose anybody could have
Yeah,
predicted what LLMs are going to result in, but
I think like
it's definitely
breaking
food for
down the
thought.
silos of the
Uh,
apps, I think was a
yeah.
huge issue at the time. And man, sometimes it's
Hmm.
wild to think about. Like that was 2017 when Workflow was acquired, and it seems like so much has
Hmm.
happened since then, which obviously it has. But at the same time,
Hmm.
technologically, it felt like we weren't that far behind then. And it is fascinating the future of all this because, and the fact that they do have a developer framework set up for you to build with now. Like that's the part that I think
Hmm.
will change things. I think it's I don't know. I think the sentiment and all those things are not the hottest development for the App Store right now. But at the same time, it's like
Yeah.
never been easier and the possibilities are cooler and more expansive and more available for you to take
Uh,
advantage of because of this.
right. Like, absolutely. And the thing with app intents is they're like so much more easier to design than entire apps.
Yeah.
So even if you were like, designing one action uh like intents, like that that in itself is so much more easier than like having an entire app that does, 50 different actions. Like, just have like one good action. That's really useful.
Yeah.
Like I can this could be like a good segue into the demo I
Sure.
wanted to show. Yeah. So So I have like a few apps that I've been working on with this like action-centered approach, right? And so the first one is it's called Parchi. It's a note-taking app.
Hmm.
And the thing is like it's like a thought dump. So you think
Oh
about
wait, oops.
something
There we go.
and Mhm. And you think about something and you're like, okay, I need to do this. I need to write down a thought really quickly. And in Vision Pro, you could have this kind of a UI, which is what it looks like. So you just speak into the air and you get like your note saved. On the iPhone, on the other hand, you could have something like this, which is like, oh, here's a quick thought. Useful, right? I just put it on my lock screen as an action. I just ran that shortcut.
Did it give you
It
that
added that
suggestion
thought
right
for me.
away? Or did you set that up?
Yeah, this particular suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was interested.
Uh-huh. So, yeah. And and you get this action right there, right? You get this note right there, and you can move around and see different notes. Like, okay, demo question, and I could write more stuff on that.
I think the part of
Mhm,
displaying this stuff on Vision is interesting. I mean,
mhm,
it can just open the app, but I think like the snippets part of app intents and displaying
mhm,
like a rich preview, almost like the original Siri shortcuts UIs were like stronger than what some of what we have now, I think. But
mhm.
that kind of stuff is like
Yeah,
super interesting.
yeah, like totally. Like this is like what you're looking at is like literally one action that is running across the app, or maybe two actions. Like one is to save the note, and one is to fetch the notes. But
Hmm.
that's literally it, right? And like you can display it in like any way that you can. Uh,
Totally. It's
mhm,
multimodal. That's how they like to say
mhm.
it.
Multimodal. Yeah.
Do you have any other
Mhm.
for lookup?
Yeah. Like
I mean, I guess that's
So
word of
yeah,
the
with
day is
lookup,
separate.
this is word of the day. I've already demoed most of the UI to people with the screens, and these are all app intents. The pronunciation is an app intent. Um, the share action is an app intent.
Oh, I have a question. Could the
Mhm.
pronunciation pronounce as like a verb be used with any word? Because I think that
Yeah. Uh,
that part of
yeah.
apps plus like everything else outside of your app is I think the part that's super interesting just as a function. But even like
Hmm.
I don't know, I'm just thinking of like you select text in a on a web page and then you can just say like pronounce this with lookup. And I think that's got to be
Yeah.
possible with I mean at least with text. I don't know if there's the automatic I know that you're looking at it. They might need more affordances, but the new on-screen
Uh-huh.
content part definitely makes this possible. I guess pronounce maybe is like
Mhm.
that's thinking of one word, not like a whole paragraph. But
Yeah. Right.
hmm.
But essentially, you could have something like that, right? Uh, like you have this shortcut right there. Oops, it's my music library. You have this shortcut right there, and then like having it execute in like uh, different modalities is like pretty trivial at that point. Just like okay, yeah, I can run this in like 10 different areas right away. What is stopping me from asking Siri to look at something on screen and then fill in the input itself? Uh, yeah, it would require a lot more, you know, a lot more smarts from Siri
Yeah, I
itself.
think it's all on
But it
their
doesn't
side.
seem like, yeah, it'll probably require a lot more smarts on their side. It's just like have an index of all the possible actions that you could perform inside iOS and then like find the ones that you need. And
Well, that's kind
yeah,
of how
it's
they do
mhm,
schemas is their strategy for it of rather than
mhm,
let me just put this back for a second of like rather than it looking for every single kind of action for pronounce, it's just like when
mhm,
I'm doing text editing or I don't know what the domain would be, but when I'm working with text, these are the kind of things, and then all of these apps have the features for pronounce, and then you happen to use lookup most recently, so it gives it to you. Like that part I think is that's what
mhm.
it the promise of it. And what I think that's what they the part where it only works 2/3 of the time, and then like one third of the time it's just like I didn't figure it out, and then you're like,
Mhm.
well, if
I,
I can't rely on it, I'm not going to
yeah,
use it. So
uh, I find it very interesting that they have like these restricted schemas and domains as well. Like right now, it's only under like what, 9 different domains, is it?
it's 12, but I think it's to me that's
Uh-huh.
almost irrelevant because they didn't even ship that part. So like it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter yet. When they
Hmm.
launch it, they need more. I think, but totally the part of like if your domain just doesn't work, what do you do? Like I think that's maybe
Right.
this is where 9 months or 11 and a half months ago they didn't have a good solution, and by now they probably do,
Hmm.
and they just haven't announced it. And so I think that's
Yeah.
the interesting part of like what we're going to see basically is are they going to be limited,
Yeah.
because that was even how they started Siri originally was with domains, and then it didn't work for
Hmm.
them. They had like you can't just keep adding domains, and then they just kind of did the same thing again. So like I don't know, maybe that's it is in their
Hmm.
DNA at least. But
Yeah. Predefined domains is seems like the wrong way of doing this,
although
to
see,
me at
what's
least. Yeah.
fascinating though is
Uh-huh.
predefined domains is not possible for humans to maintain, but like
Yeah.
Apple's own internal AI probably could look at the whole app store and be like, well, here's all of the things that here's all the possible domains. And then like they're like, oh sweet. Like
Hmm.
or I don't know. I mean, maybe it's almost more like
Uh-huh.
it can make a domain on the fly. Like that's the generative
Hmm.
domains. Is now that's getting meta, but
Uh-huh.
it
I
kind of
mean,
makes sense though.
it's
That's
yeah, like
that's all
I
machine
wouldn't
learning
worry too
is.
much about it anyway. Yeah. Like instead of, just providing a set of default domains, like developers themselves would be happy to give like, you know, an extra uh an extra schema of, this is what it looks like, right?
Yeah.
This is
I mean, isn't that what the
like
intent
this is
is?
my action, this is what the domain is, this is how you have to trigger it. Like that
Yeah,
in
oh, I
itself is
see.
enough
Like you
to
could
trigger
provide
the
your own
actions.
domain in addition to
Hmm.
your actual intent. That would be interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, you describe your domain. Like each action is its own domain. So
Hmm.
you describe this is what it's useful for. And then Apple's own AI tagger could tag that as like, these are the keywords
So
that this action exists in.
I just saw a comment that says, "Is this even practically possible in the real world?" And I think that's what is so fascinating and why I am like I would be a lot more distraught about this if app intents didn't exist the way it does and the
Hmm.
extensibility of that API. Like that part of all the apps providing what they can do and the all the data is what Apple Intelligence offers. I think the question it really does come down to how good are their models? Can it work on your phone? And if it can't work on your phone, how quick can it send it to servers and back? So like I think where the mobile world is always going to be significantly harder than assuming you have a laptop or something like that because it really does just going back to like if it kills
Yeah.
their promise of all day battery life, they're not going to do it. And they will like they have versions that it does work, but it's just really power hungry or something like that. I think that
Hmm.
in the same like this wouldn't have been possible without AI also helping them advance how functional it can be. Like it feeds on itself in such a fascinating way.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that is exactly like, having the battery life to that and making sure like what actions are being, I feel like that is a problem that could be solved by having an action store that's separate
Hmm.
from what Siri and like what shortcuts and everything else is providing. Maybe have an Apple Intelligence app that says like these are the actions that I would like to enable in the app.
Yeah.
And that's like it's indexing those like, limited set of actions beyond like the basic knowledge of what it considers to be like, maybe 100 and 120 actions.
Yeah.
And at that point, it sounds a little more manageable, but then again, it's only a matter of time where you have something like this be a coordinator. When you look at like literally even Chat GPT is running in the same way, except its actions are inside, Chat GPT itself,
Yeah.
and they don't actually disclose those actions. But when they do the function calling part of it, it is literally trying to do that. It is literally trying to achieve that.
I think that's why like
And
so many
mhm,
times it's like can Apple ever fix Siri? It's like, yeah, all these other people are doing exactly what we want them to do. So it's like it's not
yeah.
impossible. Like we can see someone else
Mhm.
Google just demoed it on stage or whatever. So like I think that's the part
Yeah.
that's whether or not they'll get there by June this year or June next year and like that I think that's the part that I don't want to get too much into
Mhm.
like Apple Inc. analysis, but that's where like a lot of I think a lot of the focus is on like Apple as a corporation and their choices and things like that. I think the technology and what they've chosen
Right.
to do is super interesting, but it's just like it almost is like they maybe chose not I don't know about wrong, but they chose something different, and then all these other companies are choosing this thing, and we're
Hmm.
seeing that change every day too. So like the yearly cycle, it like in your life they haven't done anything in a year, and so it does
Yeah.
make sense that people are skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Like, they get one more shot at like improving Siri for the next 1 year, but then that's it. Like you won't hear until dub 2026 what Siri is gonna look like,
Well,
or
hopefully at the point
what,
release.
yeah,
Hopefully
hopefully at
in
the point
mid-year they
release.
do that.
Yeah.
I think they should. And that's
Uh-huh.
I think also like they've always added at shortcuts actions in the middle of the year that really is
Hmm.
like you can deploy to this without overhauling the platform. And so it's I think that
Uh-huh.
we'll see more of that.
They had this new, I'm not sure if they had like this new action or was it like a completely um, built-in shortcut, but it was called something like hold that thought,
Oh
and
yeah, the
which
accessibility
they
one.
which they just released. Yeah. And I'm like, that is such a cool that is such a cool action in itself. It's like, just ask Siri to hold that thought and you just narrate that thought. And
Yeah,
if it, like theoretically speaking, if its transcription was as good as something like Whisper or something, like you could have something that was really useful there.
totally. I think that whole
Hmm.
level beyond Apple Intelligence of like shortcuts. I think what's hard is I feel like I've been doing shortcuts for 10 years, so like I know that I'll be
Hmm.
able to build on top of this, but I think that's the part that's so
Hmm.
fascinating is all of these apps if they design and add all these actions, suddenly every app that you have has automation tools available for it as well, and you can build on top of that.
Hmm.
Apps can provide their own tools for you built on top of themselves and hooked into other apps. Like my clients are
Hmm.
adding chat gpt integration into their shortcuts and getting it for free also by like just like find me these places and then put that into tripsy. And then I just also think
Uh-huh.
like how Apple could make shortcuts. That I mean, this was straight up would have been
Uh-huh.
my job, and they don't because I was the one who would have done it for them because I did it for workflow,
Uh-huh.
and all the shortcuts in the gallery are like 80% are the ones that I
Uh-huh.
built. But I yeah, just the
Uh-huh.
app store of like being able to discover these and play with them. I mean, it really is just like they need a Siri app that is almost like
Hmm.
shortcuts, but not under the hood. Like shortcuts is so close to the metal that you instantly open source the thing and look at what's going on, but having it just kind of be all these
Right.
functions like the chat conversations, but then you can look at it and see, oh, here's all the intents that it was running, and that's how it set it up too. Like that would be so
Hmm.
cool. I want
Yeah.
like I want to go design that app at Apple. Or
Me
at least
too.
maybe
Me
we'll
too.
design the actions for it first.
Maybe we should design it together right
Yeah,
now,
I mean,
and yeah,
we'll be at Dub Dub. Let's
show it to people over there.
if
Yeah.
they haven't
Hmm.
yet. Oh, that's super cool. I mean,
Yeah.
so I caught on to something that you said earlier that you shouldn't start with all the actions in your app because that's like too complex. And that was something that I was
Hmm.
starting to like design my own app, and I did the exact thing of just starting to build the interface, and then I was like I got to stop because I'm
Hmm.
doing it wrong. I think the hard part of abstracting your design into actions is the part where
Hmm.
you like can't fit them together literally in the way that the design does of like I know
Hmm.
that it's a simple link tracking app and I want to have like saving the links and then adding tags and adding folders when I like
Hmm.
could think of how to do those actions, but I think putting them back together then is harder for me because I don't have the experience of designing apps yet. That maybe is
Uh-huh.
more intuitive to you.
No, it is definitely one of the bigger challenges with something like this. It's like you, even with something like as simple as, saving a note or saving a link, you have like three actions already in that process.
Totally.
You have the action of, saving a note. You have the action of fetching the notes. You have the action of fetching the links. You have the action of deleting them. So you have like new link, updated link, which is like you change something in that, and deleting the link that has to be like one of the actions you allow like for the deletion of that. And then the fourth action is like, fetching all of that and showing it to people like these are the available
Show,
links and then searching through
open,
them.
duplicate,
Hmm.
copy without duplicating. I see this is I
Yeah,
have a framework of like
yeah,
there are a standard set of actions like that.
right.
I think the part that like last
Hmm.
1% that's everything else though is the other part that is like hard to understand that
Hmm.
because every app has a unique thing like pronounce for example
Hmm.
isn't a
Yeah.
standardized one but makes sense in context
Hmm.
but it's kind of just like act
Exactly.
or something as the
Yeah.
like generic verb.
Hmm. Exactly. It's like, yeah. So it is complex. Like
Yeah.
even if you start with like one action, there are like five actions that you already need to take care of. Um, but I would say like once you've designed that model of like, okay, so this is the link tracking app. So it has to have like these actions. These are the most essential ones. Like once you get through that process, it's incredible how easy it is
Yeah.
to design a UI around
I was going to
it.
say like it
Yes,
almost
it's a lot of work. Mhm.
comes naturally from it like by
Uh-huh.
definition you have to do these things and I think that's why like the UI is so fascinating because you can basically run your entire app headless through shortcuts and through Apple Intelligence
Mhm.
but then really like adding in the affordance on top that makes it even better is that super unique opportunity that I think is like I'm really excited to see Sam Henry Gold. I don't remember what company he works at, but I think they're doing really interesting UI experiments. And I think that's something that
Mhm.
AI vibe coding is going to help us explore more is like this of like you already built all your
Yeah.
intents. And so it's like, I want this UI, but make it look like path. Like that's one that's stuck in my brain for years of how to take these
Uh-huh.
same like conventions, but then instead of selecting from a menu, like using the gesture and then a radial menu and things like that. And I feel like
No. Yeah.
usually people just don't test it because it's too hard to be wrong. Like it's too much
Yeah.
work to then have it not work. Um,
Yeah. I would say with like some sort of a custom interaction, I think the biggest challenge is maintaining that.
mm,
Like I have a custom interaction in Lookup that I maintain every 6 months because it breaks in like random ways. Every time Apple changes something in UI kit, that changes how it renders the collection view.
mm,
And my interaction goes for a toss. I'm like, okay, I have to go back. I have to revise the values. I have to see what's happening because any sort of custom interaction you work with, like it's it's a mishmash of things
yeah, that's true.
that are like, you know, custom hacks, and you like there's never a right way to do any of this.
Does the
And
part of like
mhm,
if that custom interaction called an intent though, does that make that easier and to maintain over time? I would assume
I think
somewhat.
it's like the one less thing to worry about
Yeah.
with that. Like if you're focused on,
Like it'll still
okay, how
work.
does this
It
thing
won't look right.
work?
But
Yeah,
um
yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
important though. Like it I think that
Mhm,
makes sense when there is a big paradigm change in the UI that like maybe it won't work right, but everything doesn't break at least
mhm,
is important for just I
yeah.
think that sort of variability of design over time.
Mhm,
That's so cool though. I mean, yeah, I mean that's why I mean it makes
yeah.
sense that experimenting with UI might I'm almost though like Swift UI can do more experiments or allow more experimentation. I think maybe I'd have to. This is where I just
Mhm.
don't know the design limitations as
No,
well.
it
But I maybe the naivety is
definitely
good. It lets me like not dream about it.
it definitely makes it easier for sure. Like I can't imagine prototyping a lot of interactions that I prototype in UIKit or in Swift UI. But uh, but still like it's like you would have random issues. Like I have this one custom interaction in the Word of the Day app and changes the background color. And I'm like, that's like really nice. And it works very well on iPhone. So I tried to port that on Apple TV. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, I'll follow the same logic. It should work properly. On Apple TV, it doesn't work at all.
Hmm.
It like the app lags and it crashes and all of that. So that's like, just changing between like one platform. When there's like a when there's a new shift, the apps that use standard UI elements, they get a lot of stuff for free. Like
Yeah.
if your app is using the tab bar, you can be sure that whatever new thing Apple comes up with uh, in iOS 19, that
It'll use the tab bar
that
still.
particular part of your app is going to look exactly like iOS 19,
Yeah. I would hope though that
right?
like as we
Yeah,
get more into generative coding too, that like
yeah.
they know that this part is different from iOS to tvOS, and so it can like
Mhm,
just account for that as it redeploys to that other platform rather than just breaking.
mhm,
And I think that's kind of why like no, I just got caught for a second of like what if they don't even what if you are just only designing actions and but like that
mhm.
doesn't I don't know. I mean that's sort of what Swift UI I mean, it's like what programming comes down to at like if you just like strip it away too. So um
Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
That's
I feel like it is a good thing that you can still design different interactions though, because I look at the apps like, not boring weather or, not borings like different applications that have a completely different style from what you see on iPhone apps.
Mhm.
But they're
Still
still
same
good
attributes.
platform citizens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Like you see the same thing on widgets, you see the same thing on different interactions, and I wonder because of that. I'm like, I think it's a good thing, like people are getting that
Hmm.
because okay, like you get the same information, but there is some utility in like seeing that information in a different way,
Well,
and
I
like the
almost think
best
like that's the
visualization sort of
only
wins.
value that you can
Mhm,
provide beyond someone else who does the same thing is
mhm,
that design and taste and interaction. Like I think that's I was sort of saying like what other reason does an app have to use your app versus just asking
mhm.
an AI directly? Like that's a whole level of
Right.
competition and design that is like is this more efficient than just chatting? Even though like that's not I also don't think chatting is efficient in a separate way. I mean, this is a whole
Mhm.
Johnny Ive and Sam are working on that, so we'll see. They'll teach us what the answer is soon.
Yeah. But the truth is like that competition is already existing, right? Like people are like, I paid $20 a month for ChatGPT and I
Mhm.
can do all of that in ChatGPT. So why do I need your app to look up a word? Why do I need your app for this particular thing?
That's why
And that
features
is where the
is like
differentiation.
app
Mhm,
intents, control center, widgets, notifications. Notifications
yeah.
as a space I feel like has been totally forgotten about in my mind
Mhm,
as a interaction level of like running an intent off the off the notification is a whole super I'm just saying this out loud so that I can write it down and think about it later.
uh,
Like bringing the
yeah.
data to you because it
Mhm.
yeah I'm sorry I'm just thinking half thought
No,
there.
it's funny that you mentioned that, like running an app intent as a notification. Um, because I was trying to prototype this one thing recently, and um, it's like an olfactory timer,
Hmm.
which sort of acts like a notification system if you think about it, where it's like, okay, I can give it this action that tell me when it's about like, you know, when it's golden hour time, send me a
Hmm.
notification,
Well, net automations
right?
also and triggers. I mean,
Mhm,
like notifications already sort of have that access behind the scenes to respond to
mhm.
an event, but that
Yeah.
whole level of just apps responding to something happening and then telling you that either letting you take the action or telling you that it already took the. I mean, this is getting into like agents and stuff like that, but that's super. Oh man, sorry, I'm stressed out about the
No.
opportunity because if they do add automations too, just the complexity is it's like everything under the sun, and I think this is
Mhm.
also where then on top they need like Siri to help you do this, not just like I can build really cool shortcuts and automations and no one else gets to do it because they didn't spend half a decade as an independent creator building for this tool. Like I'm the only one who's had that
Mhm.
much time. And so like really making it easy to take advantage of all this is definitely going to be their challenge. And just like
Mhm.
education of I think we're talking about this and we know because we've watched all the sessions and have even heard of what app and sense is, but for the average, even the average developer outside of, I'd say, like an indie iOS circle, doesn't know or care. They know about Apple Intelligence, but when I see people on Twitter saying like Apple's fully behind on this, it's like, have you heard of App Intense? Because like if you haven't, you should look it up. You're right though; they're still behind, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're not like two towns
It's
over,
it's
not even paying attention.
yeah.
Like
It's not like a barren land where like there's nothing that's growing or anything like that. They have the they have the underpinnings of what they could have with something like Siri and like if they do it right, they have a platform on their hands.
totally.
Yeah. But it's like I think I keep thinking back on the question about like, uh yes, in theory it sounds great, but when it comes to scale, can you have an LLM that scales to a point where you have like let's say the number of apps that you have
Yeah,
uh,
for me.
on your app on your phone, and then you multiply like each app having on average like 10 actions. Like those are the number of actions it needs to index and find out. So you might want to just train an LLM just to just fine tune for that particular
I'm
task.
sure.
But
Yeah.
Mhm. But that sounds like a trivial challenge to
Yeah.
me. Yes,
Not
like
that
right
hard.
now it's not that easy, perhaps, but that is where the engineering comes in.
I
Like
mean,
if it was that simple, then you'd have like 10, 50 other apps doing the same thing.
I've had the joke
Yeah.
for years that get the people who are on the camera app who are doing 10 billion operations per second in real time as they're taking photos, but you can't like
Uh-huh.
look at the list of actions and figure out which one works. Like obviously it's not the same thing
Mhm.
and that's an oversimplification. And then like if you know anything about engineering, yeah, it is a very hard
Mhm.
problem to solve. And that's I think that's why like there's a certain point of there's somebody out there who's smarter than me that can do that and AI is helping I think them get there. I think again like can it do it without killing your battery life? I think something like an iPhone Pro, not I mean I already have it, I guess. I would barely even consider it a pro. I mean that maybe the
Mhm.
air goes down like the new thin ones go down further. What we have now becomes the
Mhm.
regular iPhone and then it's like the Pro Plus Max becomes the one that's like it's just you're carrying around a giant battery all day long like one
Mhm.
of these and then you're
It's
just
like,
like oh like I can use my
yeah.
LLMs now like I don't know there's a certain level of like hey they just added a battery to the Vision Pro just put that into your iPhone. That's awful.
That's that sounds like a regression to me. It's like, okay, we have this really thin phone now, but you have to carry a battery pack. And at that point you're like, okay, what if that battery pack had a screen on it?
Double
And then
screen.
you're back to the iPhone.
Yeah, we're back to the iPhone again. Yeah, exactly. I still the I think
Yeah.
it would it's one of those things where they'd never do it except for the fact that they just shipped it on the Vision Pro, and it's like I don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
that yeah, they'll have a Belkin powered one or something.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do think though, like, they might want to like in the time being, you have you have ML like Swift, and you have all of that, which is allowing for local LLMs to run. But we know that that's not feasible enough right now to be fast enough and to be performant enough to have like still maintain the battery life and still maintain the level of accuracy that server side something would work. So maybe in the time being they could like push to their private compute clouds and do
Yeah.
that.
I mean, they
But
have that too, which is
uh,
huge. I think it's just not
yeah.
fast. Um,
Mhm,
I think that, yeah. I think they have the solutions. I think the same thing of like, do more work at, I saw someone talking about like, do more work at night. Just like run the models on my phone to figure out what's happening when I'm not using it, and do a little bit more there. Like, obviously, it's easier said than done
mhm.
to just make it work, but I think that's why like
Yeah, I mean
we're a
that's
year
like
out
an
from where
engineering
they,
challenge at that point.
sorry.
Mhm. I mean that's sort of an engineering challenge at that point. Like
Mhm.
once you have the vision of like, okay, this is what we want to build, like you can set out and like build that vision. Uh,
And it's
okay, it might take 5 years to reach there, but still, like you have a vision for that,
yeah.
right?
That is
Hmm.
stuff seems to take 5 years inside Apple. But I mean, even
Hmm.
like thinking about like the hardware guy is now in charge of the Siri team again, and
Hmm.
just like making this actually work is probably the bigger challenge than like designing the system, which is what Giandrada just did. So that's super
Hmm.
interesting. I hadn't thought about, and like we said, the Vision Pro guy and the battery. No, just kidding. I still love that.
Uh,
Um, it's
yeah,
true
this would
that it's
be
just like,
it
I
would
mean,
be
the
crazy
Vision
if the
Pro
iPhone.
is doing an amazing feat of engineering in real
Hmm.
time and things like that. So like building a chip, building the shortcuts chip specifically for this and that kind of thing. Like obviously it's not just shortcuts, but
Hmm.
AI beyond that I think is even more important.
Hmm.
I want to wrap up soon. Do you have more from your slides or anything that you want to show?
Let me just take a quick look.
Sure.
I I quickly wanted to show something I built out in the same vein as like what if you pick together different, you know, what if you had different actions that would chain together and you could perform something around that. So it's like, so what I want to highlight here is like this is not a one-off platform. This is not like, this is not a one-off framework. Like you have this framework for iPhone apps, you have this framework for Apple platform apps, but this can be generalized into something like completely different. Like we were talking about the HomePod, that's a new
Mhm.
platform, and you could have something like that for that. But you can actually go beyond screens itself, and you can say like, okay, so I'm looking at the action and then deciding what's the right interface for it. Sometimes the right interface may not be a screen, right? It could be something completely different. And so this is what I was working on for my master's
Oh
thesis.
yeah,
It's
this
like,
is
okay,
awesome.
mhm, how do we help students study better and in a more distraction-free environment? It's like, taking a simple problem of solving a mathematical equation, right? The current way is like you pick up your phone, you find your calculator app, and you type in the calculations, and then you get a response, right? In those processes, there's like an Instagram notification waiting for you. There's a reel that your friend has sent you. There's a cat video that your friend has sent. And by the time you're reaching the calculator app, you've like already forgotten about the mathematical equation. And that's like one of the biggest distractions for students who are like, like who are increasingly moving towards like non-digital tools because they realize just how much the phone is a distraction for them. So I set out to design something with the action-centered framework. And it's like, okay, how can I make this thing easier for students? So that's like that's the action. You get solve a mathematical equation. Um, For that, you need a mathematical equation and the variables that you're looking for. And the interface itself, it could be something completely different. It could be a study lamp, right? Something out of the blue. It doesn't have to be an iPad. It doesn't have to be an iPhone. It could be something that sits on your desk all day. So what if it was like this magical lamp that turned into a study companion when you put something underneath it? And when you don't, it's just a simple lamp that functions like a lamp, right?
Totally. It's like actually
Mhm.
smart, not smart as just turn it on.
Uh, Yeah. And this is what it looks like, right? This is a simple lamp giving light and the table. Oh, there you go. And this is what I do. Pinch that and
So it's looking at a sticky note with the equation on it.
Mhm. And then it's performing an app intent and giving you the result.
That's awesome. So is it?
Mhm.
It's both scanning and projecting back down as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the lamp is like it is a camera and a projection at that point. So it's not a conventional lamp. Uh,
And so just for everyone watching, that you built this and it works for real. It's not like
yeah, It
theoretical.
it works for real. This is not a concept video. This is like real app intents running behind the scenes. I repurpose the app intents to work this way. So what it's doing is essentially what Apple Intelligence would do, which is it is taking an image of what is underneath the lamp. It is seeing that image, and the AI is then figuring out the right action for it. So right now this is like a mathematical equation. It could be summarizing notes as well. It could be finding out the to-do list of things to do for my next class. All of that are like different app intents. So what the LLM does is just coordinates and it picks like the right action uh, for the um, for the occasion. Like it sees a
Yeah.
mathematical equation, it knows the right action is solving a maths equation, and it does that. Um, and the reason I say it's like repurposed app intents, because like the app intents, they don't have like the capability to have additional senses.
Yeah.
Like this is what it looks like on a projection system. So there's like a projected view that's being returned by the app intent. But you could time this and you could say like, oh, give me a scent of roses. And that interface would not project on a surface, but it would release a scent of roses in the room, which
Because
should also be powered by app intents,
I think
but
that's why
it's
like
like a different sense.
the design, the
Mhm.
action part of the design, that's why it does matter way more than the interface, like you're saying, that this is the
Mhm.
interface, but it's really about the goal. And then it really is just that pipeline for any technology to run through and interact.
Mhm.
I think what I don't understand for Apple is how do they make this work with other tools? But then I kind of had the light bulb goes off of made for iPhone, of made for Apple Intelligence,
Mhm.
of just like
Yeah.
this tool is designed to accept intents. And like the light bulb only works with the domains of camera scanning and projection, and then it just
Mhm.
you plug it in and it just knows how to work with any third party app, not just the one too. Like that would be
Mhm.
super cool. Um, hmm.
Mhm.
I wonder
And
if
you
that's.
could you
I
could
would love
connect
it.
with like different
I want them to
home
announce this, and then we're
appliances.
like, yeah, we did
Uh-huh.
it. We're right.
Yeah, I'm trying to show it to as many people as possible, because eventually when they do come out with something like this, I can say like, okay, I designed something
Yeah, you
that
heard it here
looked
first.
like that. Yeah, it is. The funniest thing that happened with Lookup is the Lookup word of the day screen. Um, like it has looked the same for the last 8 years. And 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago, Apple redesigned their App Store screen,
uh,
which now looks like the word of the day
yeah.
screen. And literally everybody, ever since that happened, has been asking me, like, oh, so it looks like the App Store app. I thought I was in the App Store app because the UI looks so similar. And like, what was the reason behind like taking inspiration from the App Store app? And I'm like, I did not intend this to happen. It
They took
just
it from
happened
you.
so that,
Uh,
yeah, it just happened so like they were thinking about the same thing. Um, and like, this UI
yeah.
has been around since 2016 when the App Store looked completely different.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
you do have such a particular experience of making
Mhm,
a whole lot of information accessible through a UI, because that's I have like my
mhm,
shortcuts library, and part of the problem is that I have 6,000 of them, and like surfacing them in
mhm.
a way that users can just like get a new one every day or something like that. Man, I gotta copy your app.
Mhm.
I never even thought of that.
Please feel free to. Please feel
Well,
free to.
you mean the App Store design,
Yeah.
actually?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's awesome.
The App Store design. I'll design the artwork for you, like for each action. Like
Yeah,
you have
no,
like an
oh,
action of the
perfect.
day.
For each
Yeah.
shortcut, hand. No, don't do
Yeah.
that because I can make too many shortcuts. I can make 100 at once. Hmm,
Yeah.
that's cool. So, okay,
Mhm.
how can we wrap this up? What do you think is going to change in this framework? Or like how can I think it's clear that developers can take advantage of this. I think for
Mhm.
users, it really is like requesting shortcuts actions and asking, like, knowing what you want from your apps. I think is important because this is how I evaluate which apps are worth using. Is do they allow me to have this action functionality in there, um,
Mhm.
and then also like see what's
Yeah.
missing.
Mhm. I think it is an opportunity for a lot more focus. Like when I remember reading this documentation like many, many years ago. This is like I think 11 years ago at this point, where Apple had like this, framework of like, this is what an ideal app is. It solves one problem and you define like what problem it solves.
Yeah,
And
hmm,
you define like who is it solving for and how is it going to solve and like what technologies it's going to incorporate. And these are the four questions you answer and have a great app. It solves like one problem,
yeah. Is it
right?
like the one
And
thing?
like,
Well, do you ever? There was like
mhm,
a blog back in the day that highlighted apps that just
mhm,
did one thing really well, and I feel like
uh-huh,
that makes a lot of
yeah,
sense for this.
I feel like that might just be what apps are for people now.
Hmm.
It's like, this one action and does that one action really, really good.
How would you?
And
How?
that's it. Like,
I mean, I think
uh,
vibe coding changes the development process, but I think one thing that would be hard is like how do you make money doing this as a developer and just selling the one thing well? Like I feel
mhm,
like that's where people get allergic to subscriptions. But it is like
yeah.
if you just build a utility doing $1 a month thing, I mean like maybe a little more than that just because of processing fees or
Mhm.
whatever, but just like
Yeah.
minimal things that are then you just it's worth maintaining over time, but it's not like I'm trying to get $20 a month from you for just one action or
Uh-huh.
something like that.
I I would say I would go so far as to say like, like that system needs to change as well.
Yeah,
Like unless you change the financial incentives, you keep gonna go back to apps that are trying to keep you hooked into, using them. And like they try to do like everything under the sun. Like you had Dropbox, it started as like this utility that would store files for you. But now it does like dozen other things that you don't worry about.
yeah,
But you like, you know, the intent there is like as long as you're like in that one subscription, as long as you are in that one app, that subscription needs to be valuable to you. It needs to keep growing into this, all consuming, all
yeah,
encompassing app. And and I sort of wonder, I'm like, if we're moving from apps to actions, if we are moving towards discrete actions, then it might be a good idea to also consider how something like that is working, or how does the finances of that work. The
yeah.
model may not have to look like a subscription based model,
I think
at
that's
least for like
yeah.
in discrete actions.
Like down,
uh,
I feel like down the line a couple of years, it does make sense that even some of the, I mean, like the tech is like easier to build, and so in theory, it's worth or not. It's not like it's worth less, but it's not. It doesn't cost as much. Um,
Mhm,
so I don't. I mean, but I don't know if that's. Are we going to further commodify software? But like, I don't know. I think of my lived
mhm,
experience with shortcuts, and like, it doesn't really. It doesn't like the idea of software having to be this constantly maintained thing by another corporation is like a product of the way technology evolved versus like it doesn't need to be like that. Like as a person with who uses shortcuts all the time, like I'm just running my own software now, and I think it will become a lot more like distributed and personalized in that way.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean that's not like Apple's not going to be like, hey, like
That's
we're slowly moving away from app. I think this
mhm,
is why some developers are worried about moving there, but it's sort of like, are you going to
mhm.
stop this from happening? And ChatGPT is already blowing over on the other side. So like might as well
Yeah.
innovate now and figure out where we can go.
Mhm. Yeah. No, yeah, this is a completely different discussion in itself. Like,
Totally.
the economics of building an app in 2025 are so different from what they have been so far. And right, like, back when you were building an app, like the most popular question until a few years ago was like, can I not just Google this? And you had to
Mm.
come up with ways to defend that. Why Googling this is not the right solution, and using your app is. And right now it's like, can I not just chat GPT it? You can literally chat GPT everything on the world right now. So they're like, okay, how do I justify it being an app on your phone that I'm charging a set amount for you? So that's like the economics of today. And when you think about it, and like, okay, so if I were to build for this like AI system, then what are the economics for that? And do I
Yeah,
even
that's
like
true.
do I charge people every time they're running a new action?
Hmm.
They're not gonna pay for that. And it's like already sounding like a race to bottom in that sense. It's like,
in
okay.
in theory, apps are already just
Mhm,
packaging technology into a more accessible format with better designs, and
mhm.
so this is just doing the same
Yeah.
thing. But I
Uh-huh.
think it's making that technology part more accessible, and then I think in practice, then the design part is too. So it really, I don't
Mhm,
know, like it is. I think it's cool to think about this just as the change in at all levels of the access to this information. Even and then again,
mhm,
going back to just the users, like that's the thing that always I still lose, and I still live it as the
mhm,
shortcuts guy. But when I'm talking about app intents, is all of this also gives your user an unreal level of control that has
mhm.
never been like that. But I think it's up to them to take advantage of it. So that's why Siri has to, or like Shortcuts AI, the app, Apple Intelligence app, needs to make that whole part better too, because that's where we can run on top of it. And then I am a developer on top of your app, and like you're the one getting into the weeds, but I'm still able to like deploy it in the ways that might make sense for me, or even on a lamp.
Uh-huh.
That is so
Right,
cool.
right. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And it's I think there's like for users, of course, there's always a benefit to adopting new technologies. I don't know, just like how many people have told me ever since I like implemented widgets in my app, they're
Yeah,
like, we just use this app for widgets, right? And you
totally.
would still see like so many other apps that just don't do that, right?
That kills me still
And
that
mhm,
there's still major apps that I use that I love that are like, why would we even build a widget? And it's like, this
mhm,
is how those operating systems changed like 5 years ago. And some tools,
right,
like,
right, right,
I think
right,
there's
right,
a lot of apps that like deserve to be replaced by these other ones that do it better, because I
right.
think that's the thing that
Uh-huh.
I did actually really feel passionately about, is that the users are underserved, and that we could have
Mhm,
like people are a lot smarter than you give them credit for as developers, I feel like, and what
right.
they can do on top. And I think that's why like adding something like this really does make a difference, that it's like you're not even in the consideration set for me anymore if you don't have a widget.
Hmm.
And it is just, I think that's
Exactly.
for even for AI vibe coded tools, I think that's the way to make it legit, is like whatever wrapper you're doing is fine, but if it's good and deploys across the system, now I can use it and it's not just like a demo. And I think that's the like
Hmm.
actual utility of this is people really don't understand. I bet it's still
Yeah.
potential energy is not the same as utilized energy. And so I think that's the hard part that I have to catch myself is like this, the potential of this is massive. The today's version of what you can deploy is actually also still really incredible, but I think we really
Hmm.
need that LLM magic in between all of it to make it easier and just like
Hmm.
trivial too, to make your lamp turn into an intent thing. Like that should be really easy. And what's crazy for me personally is it is easy. Like I didn't have to go build an entire application and a business model just to have this technology and build it and work with myself. Shortcuts and which is enabled by app intents lets me do that. And so
Hmm.
like that unlocking of AI interfaces and the information that we have outside of phones and into the real world is, I think, super interesting. And I love that
For
you're
sure.
doing that first. That's like the first experiment. That's like the first real world experiment
Hmm.
of Apple Intelligence almost. So nice job.
Uh-huh. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say to people before, or where can people find you? And also your apps too. Like let everyone know.
Mhm. Yeah. So I can drop in the links for my apps for the
Sure.
show notes. Uh, but I am on all social networks as Vidit B. You can find me on Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, even on Twitter. Although Twitter is a little more um, is like I post less technical stuff over there.
Sure.
So
Well, we're
I would
live
say
on
like
Twitter right now.
Mastodon. Mhm. We're live on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's like one technical stuff, but it's a little more diverse. Like I would sometimes post about Indian films as well. So if you want to have like my opinion on Indian movies and what to watch over there, please
Honestly,
follow me on Twitter
I
as
love
well.
that too. I love the
Yeah.
diversity of information and just also just because of the time zone difference that I feel like
Uh-huh.
I want to see a lot more. But where
Uh-huh.
it's Vidit B on Twitter.
Yeah. And you can see my writings on blog.withitb.com. That's where I write about everything that I work on.
Nice. That's amazing.
Mhm.
Well, I feel like we should call it here. I can keep talking about this forever. I think if they do
Mhm.
something like significant around this, I'd love to stream again this summer. And I want to just have
Uh-huh.
these conversations more often. Like, there's no reason to wait for next Thursday's stream or whatever. Like, it's just when we feel like doing it. I'm having Red Rank
For sure.
on Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about AI
Mhm.
and vibe coding as well. So I hope to see you in
Oh
the
wow,
comments,
that's
Vidit.
fun. Yeah, I would love to learn from him. He's
He's
doing a lot of like interesting things for sure
totally.
in
That's
that
why.
space.
And if anyone
Yeah.
who's watching ever has suggestions for people to be on the stream too, let me know, and I'd be happy to host them.
Mhm.
Well, awesome. This has
Yeah.
been incredible. Thank
So,
you for coming on the show. Do you have any last
thank
inspiring
you. Thank you so
AI
much.
words? Design
I don't have I don't have a lot of AI words. I would love to not use the word AI for a bit. I think um,
actions.
I've seen so much around AI. I'm like every time I hear AI something, I'm like, okay, this is a good sign to stay away from this tool. It's like because they're not sure how to use AI.
Yeah.
They're just like, AI, AI toaster. That's like a good idea.
Hey, you
Like,
just
what
made
does
an
it really
AI
do? Yeah,
lamp, technically. Um,
yeah.
I think that's why
It's
though.
like, yeah,
What you're this
AI
is
lamp. Yeah.
exactly why your talk and your point
Uh-huh.
matters. Is it's it really isn't about AI. That's just the way to make
Hmm.
your designs and your actions like scale or something like that. But really, it
Hmm.
does just come down to the tech behind it. And that's my apology for
Yeah.
making it about AI, because that's just where tech is right
Uh-huh.
now. And but it's all
No,
so
I get
mixed
it. I get
together
it.
that
It's like, yeah.
that's what's so fun. Is it? I think we were on a
Hmm.
point where like I didn't really see where this was going to evolve, and now it's like, oh, it's actually like evolving right in front of our eyes, and so that's super exciting to see.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm like, this is like any other technology, right? It's like ML, it's like, you name it. At the end of the day, like, what are you actually accomplishing with that? That's like very important. Like, is it helping me do this thing better? Is it helping me perform this thing that I could earlier not perform? Like, what is that thing? I would love to know that, as opposed to the tech behind it, which is always
Totally
fun to like go through. But I'm like, okay, start with what does it help me do? Like,
doesn't help
if
if I
it's a
can't
lamp, it's like
use it at the end of the
helping.
day.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
totally.
Hmm.
Well, awesome. I feel like we should end it there, and everybody make sure to check out Vidit on social media and also his app Look Up. And otherwise, I feel like
Hmm.
I will end the stream there. I'm gonna just close it out. I feel like I don't want to keep it running because it'll just drop and
Yeah,
everything. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and I will see you on Tuesday in the AI stream. All right. Talk to you later.
yeah.
Bye.
See you.